Have you ever noticed that the best results come precisely when we stop worrying? It seems that opportunities arise when we are not desperately seeking them, and long-awaited peace comes when we cease trying to control it. This is a true paradox that haunts us. We spend our lives believing that we need to fight, plan, and worry in order to achieve what we desire. But what if it's all backward? Our obsession with control actually prevents us from living life fully. Michel de Montaigne, a brilliant and somewhat rebellious thinker, has an interesting answer to this question. Living in an era of turbulence, he lost friends and relatives, battled illnesses, and saw his world turned upside down. However, it was precisely when he stopped trying to control everything that he found freedom few can attain. Montaigne was no preacher of absolute truths. On the contrary, his philosophy was an invitation to doubt, experimentation, and above all, detachment. He teaches us that by freeing ourselves from the need for certainty and control, we open the path to something far more powerful, peace and authenticity. In this text, we explore how Montaigne's philosophy can help us live without constant anxiety. Why might letting go be the key to a lighter, more meaningful life? Born in 1533 in France, amid religious wars, political intrigues, and instability, Montaigne's life was shaped by privilege, tragedy, and forces beyond his control. Despite being born into a wealthy family and receiving an exceptional education, he could not escape the harsh realities of loss, pain, and uncertainty. By age 30, Montaigne faced the brutality of existence head-on. His best friend, Etienne de la Boétie, died suddenly, leaving him devastated. Soon after, his father passed away, followed by the tragic death of his brother, who succumbed to injuries sustained from a tennis ball hitting his head. To compound these tragedies, Montaigne himself nearly died falling off a horse at high speed, and shortly thereafter, his newborn daughter also perished. Imagine enduring such losses within a short period. How would you feel as your world crumbles around you? Instead of losing his mind or sinking into despair, Montaigne made a radical decision. He left public life and retreated to his estate in the countryside, where he spent years reflecting and writing in his private library surrounded by over 1,000 books. There, he realized that nothing in the external world could guarantee absolute stability and safety. The only thing he truly controlled was his own mind, his perception and reaction to the world. In silence and solitude, he began penning his famous essays, texts that did not seek absolute truths but explored his own experiences, errors, and doubts. For Montaigne, the pursuit of perfection was replaced by the constant exercise of accepting uncertainty. He discovered that much of our suffering stems from the illusion of control. We believe we can predict the future, avoid pain, and shape the world according to our will. His retreat from the world was not an act of surrender, but one of liberation. Away from politics and social obligations, he learned to live in a way that made sense to him. Far from capitulating, he found a voice amidst the chaos. One of the greatest lessons we can draw from Montaigne's story is that sometimes we must step back from the noise of the world to find our own voice. When we stop worrying about pleasing others and meeting their expectations, we discover a form of freedom that no one can take away. What if everything we believe is just a convenient illusion? What if our relentless quest for certainty is the root of our anxiety? Montaigne did not seek absolute truths. Perhaps that's why he was one of the freest philosophers to have ever lived. His famous question, "What do I know?" was not merely a gesture of intellectual humility, but an invitation to a new way of life. For him, peace lay not in possessing all the answers, but in the ability to accept uncertainty. Since ancient times, philosophers have tried to define the best path to a fulfilling life. Stoics advocate self-control and acceptance of fate, while Epicureans see the key to happiness and pleasure and simplicity. Montaigne took a different route. He distrusted philosophies that promised definitive answers. Inspired by skepticism, a philosophical current that questions man's ability to reach absolute truths, he believed there is no single right way to live or explain life. The world is full of uncertainties and contradictions, and the true sage is someone who learns to swim in this uncertainty without reducing it to fixed formulas. This viewpoint contrasts sharply with how many people live today. We constantly strive for certainty. We want clear-cut answers to our problems, flawless advice, and assurance of success, happiness, and recognition. Yet this obsession with control only makes us more anxious. Montaigne offers us something else, acknowledging that we don't know everything, and that's okay. He believed that reason is limited and prone to error, and that our intellectual arrogance often brings us more suffering than benefit. In his essays, he ironized truth, suggesting that what is true for one person may not be so for another. While this idea might be uncomfortable for some, it is also liberating. If everything is uncertain, we don't have to carry the burden of finding all the answers. Our opinions and beliefs can be wrong, and embracing this possibility can make us more open to dialogue, flexible, less dogmatic, and ultimately, calmer. Living through an era of religious wars between Catholics and Protestants, Montaigne recognized that much human suffering arises from our inability to admit that we might be wrong. By relinquishing the illusion of certainty, he found a rare inner peace. He had no need to prove or defend his point of view as the only correct one. Releasing fixed beliefs that could become prisons, he simply observed, experimented, and learned without needing to arrive at final conclusions. Ultimately, Montaigne teaches us that peace does not come from certainty, but from ease in the face of uncertainty. When we stop worrying too much about reasoning, we can finally breathe. What would happen if we suddenly stopped caring about what others think? What if we ceased measuring our worth by success or constant struggle? What if we accepted that life is uncertain and fluid, and that the real secret lies not in controlling everything but in adapting? This frees us up to live differently. Montaigne understood this firsthand, witnessing the sudden deaths of friends and relatives, facing illness, and surviving near-fatal accidents. After all this, he realized that existence is fragile, and excessive attachment to the future is a trap. Therefore, he decided to completely change his approach to life. He moved to the countryside, abandoning his political ambitions, and began living in the present, writing and reflecting on the human condition without the pressure of achieving grand goals. However, Montaigne's mistakes do not mean that he advocated a passive or indifferent life. On the contrary, he was neither a fatalist who accepted everything without question nor a nihilist who believed that nothing mattered. Instead, he proposed something subtler and more powerful: active detachment. He believed that we should act, exert effort, and strive for what we want, but not enslave ourselves to outcomes. In other words, do everything within our power, but do not despair if things don't go as planned. As he wrote, "There is no favorable wind for the sailor who doesn't know where he's headed." The key is to have direction. Michel de Montaigne believed that those who learn to cope with life's unpredictability are wiser and happier in the end. The more we try to control everything, the more we suffer when we inevitably lose control. Reflecting on your life, perhaps you'll notice that the most free and happy moments were when you stopped overly worrying. Maybe it happened when you decided not to care excessively about others' opinions, refused to forcefully solve a problem, or simply accepted things as they were. Montaigne reminds us that life happens in the present, and often, excessive attachment to the future prevents us from seeing the beauty of the current moment. He wrote, "He who places his happiness and dependence upon tomorrow is condemned to eternal unhappiness." Montaigne urges us to let go and flow with life rather than fight against it. Paradoxically, when we do this, things start happening more naturally. Results come not because we are obsessed with them, but because we've stopped putting so much pressure on ourselves. Montaigne teaches us that true freedom lies not in conquering the world, but in conquering oneself. To achieve this, we must learn to live without attachments, with lightness, curiosity, and readiness to accept whatever life presents. In conclusion, Montaigne's great lesson is simple. Stop trying to control everything and learn to live. Like anything that appears straightforward, this idea hides immense depth. How can we really rid ourselves of the need for certainty? Montaigne doesn't offer us a magic formula or a single path. Instead, he invites us to experiment, observe ourselves, and embrace our contradictions. Life is not a straight line. It's a series of unexpected turns. True wisdom lies in learning to navigate them without despair. To achieve this, we must learn to live without attachments, with ease, curiosity, and a willingness to embrace whatever life brings us. In the end, Montaigne's great lesson is simple. Stop trying to control everything and learn to live. But like all seemingly simple ideas, this one holds immense depth. How can we truly free ourselves from the need for certainty? Montaigne doesn't offer a magic formula or a single path. Instead, he invites us to experiment, observe ourselves, and accept our contradictions. Life is not a straight line. It is a series of unexpected turns. True wisdom lies in learning to navigate them without despair. Montaigne teaches us that our obsession with certainty makes us suffer, that the pursuit of recognition traps us, and that our desire for control distances us from what truly matters. Paradoxically, when we stop worrying so much about results, they come naturally, because we free ourselves from the need for approval and begin to act more authentically. By letting go of success, we become more creative and spontaneous. Accepting life's uncertainty is what ultimately brought Montaigne peace. He lived and died faithful to this idea. In his later years, he dedicated himself to writing and reflecting on his thoughts, observing life as it is, without illusions, pretensions, or masks. Montaigne realized that the greatest mistake people make is taking everything too seriously, and that the secret to life lies in asking the right questions. So, I ask you, what if, starting today, you stop carrying the constant burden of worry? What if you stopped trying to prove something to others? What if you simply embraced uncertainty and started living in the present moment? Perhaps, like Montaigne, you would discover that true freedom is not about controlling the world, but about freeing yourself from yourself. If you've made it this far, it means that this reflection has resonated with you in some way, and that's powerful. We live in an era where we are constantly bombarded with information, demands, and expectations. To consider a different, lighter, and freer path is already a huge step. Montaigne teaches us that we don't need to have all the answers, and that life doesn't have to be a constant struggle to prove something to someone. We can simply live, and that in itself is a revolution. If this reflection made you think differently, share in the comments. Which part of Montaigne's philosophy resonated with you the most? Do you feel that you worry too much about things you can't control? How would your life change if you could relax a little and trust the flow of events? And of course, if you enjoy these kinds of reflections, you know what to do. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and hit the like button. This helps me continue bringing you content like this. Since we're talking about detachment and freedom, there's another video on the screen that might interest you. I won't reveal the topic. Click to find out. Who knows, maybe it will give you a new perspective as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.